Proposals for action, resolution number 19625A1, equity studies to implement humanizing learning experiences for all students PK through 12 and SFUSD. This was moved and seconded on June 25th, 2019. We were dealing with the amended version of the resolution. Can we have a report from the budget meeting on September 4th?
Yes. Is that just in regard to this or just budget in general? To this, it was moved with a positive recommendation, and there were no, there wasn't any immediate impacts. There was a small amount that was related to planning, but there wasn't any immediate or large impacts that implementing this would take this year.
Okay, and now we'll have Commissioner Alison Lam read the resolution into the record.
Okay. So this is Resolution 19625A1, Equity Studies to Implement Humanizing Learning Experiences for All Students Pre-K through 12 in SFUSD. And the authors of this resolution are myself, Commissioner Alison M. Collins, and Commissioner Jenny Lam. Whereas SFUSD has stated it values equity and strives to make social justice a reality in our schools and throughout our district, and the Vision 2025 plan's graduate profile includes global and local identities, and whereas San Francisco Board of Education voted unanimously on resolution number 141028A4, institutionalizing ethnic studies centered on decolonization and the elimination of racism into the SFUSD, and to provide every high school student with the opportunity to enroll in ethnic studies coursework and implementation, has not allowed all students to participate. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 1511-10A1, honoring the historical contributions of Chinese Americans, and directs the schools to educate students about the contributions of Chinese Americans, and there is currently no mechanism to monitor the reach or implementation of that resolution. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 183-13A1 in support of equitable services and staff for Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students, stating SFUSD will accurately measure current progress on reducing disparities facing our NHPI students. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 82-24A5, 21st Century English Language Arts Curriculum, directs high school teachers to read works of literature drawn from a recommended list created in consultation with teachers, students, parents, and community members. While there is a need to do this for pre-K through 8, the district has not currently developed an evaluation tool to measure the impact of implementation. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 1612-13A1 in support of inclusive schools that celebrate diversity and respect people of all identities, calling for SFUSD to make curricula, resources, and materials available to schools to build supportive school environments free of intolerance, bias, and prejudice, and urges school site leaders to take proactive steps, such as holding school-wide assemblies, partnering with student government and student leaders, implementing school-wide curricula to ensure educators address intolerance and prejudice within our school communities. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 155-12A1 in support of the achievement and success of all African American students, directing the district to create systems and strategies that explicitly support African American students, including the expansion of professional development that addresses staff members' implicit bias and cultural competency. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 153-10A1, creating Arabic and Vietnamese world language pathways, stating that SFUSD shall provide a learning environment where all students can be proud and celebrate their heritage and that of others. And
whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution 6108 A6, meeting the needs of LGBTQ students, directing the district to review, improve, and create curriculum that highlights LGBT issues and contributions to ensure LGBTQ culture is shown positively and inclusively and is free of heterosexist bias, and resolution number 131010A4, establishment of a safe and supportive schools policy, directing the district to provide professional learning for all site and central office staff in implicit bias, stereotyping, and LGBTQ sensitivity. And whereas the San Francisco Board of Education adopted resolution number 17110A1, undocumented, unafraid, in United States, directing the district to allocate resources to organizations providing support and opportunities for undocumented students, and establishing site-based support for undocumented students and students in mixed status families. Therefore, it be resolved that implementation of all SFUSD curriculum should centralize decolonizing and anti-oppressive pedagogical scholarship, specifically Dr. Patrick Camangian's framework of humanization as defined by all content areas will develop student capacity for the following principles of humanization. Knowledge and love of self. Students should be involved in examining, explaining, and interpreting the world not as objects, but as subjects of their humanity. Solidarity between communities and with the most marginalized. Understanding and uniting with one another based on our students' common and diverging experiences and individual and collective needs. Third, self-determination. The claiming of an intellectual identity and active participation in the transformation of material conditions. Be it further resolved, SFUSD educators will analyze and interrupt systemic oppression as it impacts instruction and student experience with the support of professional development that centers educator racial identity development, culturally and community responsive pedagogy. The Equity Studies team and the Equity Studies Community Task Force will collaborate to create
a PK-12 culturally and community responsive calendar for sites, a rubric or set of resources for school site leadership to create environments that are visibly welcoming for all students and families. Further, be it resolved that SFUSD establish a permanent equity studies team guided by the humanization framework above to be comprised of the Deputy Superintendent of Social Justice and Instruction and the Chief Academic Officer and one teacher on special assignment from each science, math, English, ethnic studies, social studies, VAPA and multilingual department, special education, student, family, community support, a trauma-informed practitioner, Office of Research, Planning, and Accountability Department, who will be redesignated as an Equity Studies lead. These leads, along with the Deputy Superintendent of Social Justice and Instruction and the Chief Academic Officer, are directed to meet bi-weekly to integrate promising practices from SFUSD's Equity Studies framework to enhance students' knowledge of love of self, solidarity, and self-determination, and ensure that the curricula students engage with are representative of the diverse communities of San Francisco. Identify most effective practices in developing educator leader capacity to address the issues of race, ethnicity, language, culture, gender identity, expression, and sexual orientation, ability, and underserved populations as they impact instruction in the classroom. Develop a comprehensive, culturally responsive curriculum scorecard to be used by teachers and content teams to evaluate existing curricula and propose improvement plans. Report progress on implementation, including a timeline by the first General Board meeting in December 2019, and report to the Equity Studies Community Task Force quarterly until full implementation and on a biannual basis thereafter. And be it further resolved, the Equity Studies team will map curricular integration points, identify model units for a culturally responsive core curricular scope and sequence, and regularly calendar across the grade levels pre-K through 12, including cultural heritage celebrations, student and family activities, student clubs and focus months around labor history, environmental justice, race, ethnicity, gender identity, expression, and sexual orientation, ability, etc. And further be it resolved, SFUSD establish mandatory PD for all site and central staff on implicit bias, restorative practices, culturally responsive curriculum scorecards across the content areas.
Be it further resolved, the district will establish an Equity Studies Community Task Force, which will convene by September 2019 and meet monthly to define metrics and measuring success. Define metrics for measuring success, monitor and assess the work of the SF Unified School District's Equity Studies team, serve as a resource and thought partner in the work, and make recommendations on implementation. And if further be resolved, the task force shall have representation from community-based organizations engaged in education and current and classified and certificated staff from the following: family representatives from all district recognized parent advisory committees, including but not limited to the African American PAC, the American Indian PAC, SPED-CAC, DLAC, Migrant PAC, Early Ed PAC, Parent Advisory Committee. San Francisco Family Union, youth representatives from district partner organizations, Youth Making a Change, Youth Movement of Organizing Justice and Organizing, and Arab Youth Organizing, and Pure Resources. SFUSD Queer Trans Advisory Council, SFUSD Student Advisory Council, Teachers for Social Justice, Latin American Teachers Association, the Alliance of Chinese Teachers, the Alliance of Black School Educators, and Kabayan SFUSD, representation from UASF and UESF, one site-based representative of each division, elementary, middle, and high schools, Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families, Human Rights Commission, Arab Resource and Organizing Center, the Coleman Advocates for Youth and Families, Poder SF, Southeast Asian Development Center, the Samoan Community Development Center, SFUSD LGBTQ Supportive Services, SFUSD Research Planning and Assessment, SFUSD Chief Academic Officer, the Deputy Superintendent of Instruction, Innovation, and Social Justice, SFTR, and Teacher Pathway. Be it further resolved, it is recommended the Equity Studies Task Force be convened by the Human Rights Commission, and further be it resolved, the task force will make budgetary and organizational recommendations to implement this resolution. And it be further resolved, the superintendent will ensure that work of the Equity Studies team and task force is integrated and implemented by the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
Okay, thank you. We do have people sign up for public comment, then you'll be allowed to comment. Allison, we hear your name called. Just make your way to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Allison Eddy, Julie Roberts-Fong, Madi Villanova, Natalie Kim, Kevin Bogus.
Hi and good evening. My name is Natalie Kim and I'm a youth organizer at, no, you're fine. I'm a youth organizer at Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth. Equity Studies is imperative for our students.
Hold on 1 second.
You're fine.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay, that's fine. Should I project? Okay. So Equity Studies is imperative for our students. Students of color should be afforded a curriculum that is not only educational but inspirational, community-oriented, and racially equitable. One of my students came home with a worksheet based off of the documentary on colonization by the conquistadors. In its essence, the documentary painted Latinx folks as gang lords and criminals and romanticized enslavement of Haiti for sugar. A class of majority of Latinx students were forced to answer a worksheet question, what do you do when your workforce dies? That single worksheet is an example of how current curricula expect students of color to be impervious to the blatant and profuse racism that exists within our broken school system. Diverse school curricula have proven to lead to better outcomes in students, and I encourage you to lead the effort for equity within SFUSD.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here today to speak in support of the Equity Studies Resolution. At Coleman Advocates, we are committed to working to create racial equity inside the schools to make sure especially Black, Brown, Pacific Islander students are getting the high-quality education that they deserve. The district has done a lot during my time at Coleman over the last 8 years to improve and grow in those areas. We've seen increases in the graduation rate, but we actually still see a huge gap between Asian students and Black students as far as who's graduating, as well as who's getting access to CSU and USC pre-required classes to attend those schools. There's still a huge gap there. But what most excites me about this resolution is it feels like the board and the district is taking a new level of accountability to the things that they've said and they've committed to before. And so we're really excited about the prospect of supporting the district in this endeavor to kind of live up to all their previous commitments and make sure that the things that the district says they will do, and to be partners in equity and making sure everyone gets a high quality education. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Roberts-Fung. I'm speaking on behalf of the San Francisco Families Union, and I just want to say how exciting the Equity Studies Resolution is. I think that we have a habit of passing really great resolutions in San Francisco, but not necessarily always being able to fully implement them. And what I think is so exciting about this resolution is it goes beyond anything I've seen in any district in terms of comprehensively looking at equity studies throughout all our curriculum areas and all of our grades and all of our schools, and it does that in community partnership. So I really trust that the framework that's been set up and the partners that are a part of this process will help us ensure that in all of our school sites, in all of our classrooms, that all of our students are learning accurate, diverse, inclusive histories, that our students are learning about themselves and each other, and that we'll begin to chip away at a culture of white supremacy that exists in American public education as much as in private and charter schools. So I'm very excited about this resolution today. I feel like the press should be covering this in a positive way. And I just want to thank you all for your work. I'm looking forward to being a part of implementing this. I do want to say that I think it will take a lot of support. We're asking all of our educators and all of our staff to do something very differently, and we need to give them time and support and community to work together to make sure that there are changes happening in our classrooms. That doesn't happen magically by waving a wand or passing a resolution. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Madi. I'm a parent. I just wanted to say this is so historic. I'm really excited about this equity studies. I'm representing the SF Families Union, and I just wanted to say why it was really important. I want to remind you back on August 13th when Mark read the letter from my friend Dana. My friend Dana went to Washington High School, and how they talked about how the only person that they could relate to in that whole school was the dead Native on the wall. And passing this equity studies resolution so that American Indian kids in our district can see an inclusive history that includes them is huge. I want to remind you, remember the parent that spoke and said that their son is scared to tell anybody that they're Native American at a San Francisco public school. And I also want to say about when I was in school, I remember getting detention for arguing with the history teacher and telling the history teacher that Columbus didn't discover natives, that natives discovered Columbus. And I would get detention for this. I would get written up. I had a lot of issues with education to the point where it affected me that I actually didn't go to college first. I actually went to the military. If you don't know, I'm a disabled veteran. And I think things would have gone a lot differently if the curriculum included folks like me, included people of color, indigenous people, Filipinos, women, non-binary people. So I just really want to say thank you. And I also want to give some recommendation for some books that I would love to see being bought. For the elementary school level, there's an Amundsen Ohlone coloring book by Canyon. It's the only Ohlone coloring book. I think every elementary school should have it. A California Indian ABC book. They also have a California Indian 1, 2, 3 book. And then an Indigenous Peoples History of the United States, a youth edition by Debbie Reese. Those should be definitely bought by the school district implemented. Thank you.
Okay, we have comments from commissioners. Ms. Herrera.
I'm a little short. I would like to thank Commissioner Collins and Commissioner Lam for this equity studies implement, because I think that ethnic studies is really important for students. It is not an elective, it's a history class, and I want people to view it as that, because as a student of color, as an immigrant student with immigrant parents, I was not able to learn my own history and my people's history until I got to high school. And I want to thank my ethnic studies teacher, Ms. Reyes, for teaching me my real history, because when I was in elementary school and middle school, the only thing I was taught about Native Americans was what they gathered and what they ate. I was not taught that they were killed. And so to me, that's very important that students are able to learn that, because it is our history and we need to be taught that. And I know a lot of people want to sugarcoat it, but people, like students, need to learn that, even if it's from a small age. Like, we really need to be taught that. And we say that we're SFUSD and that we have an equity lens for our students. So I feel like this equity education is really important, and I'm glad that SFUSD is really trying to implement this. And I'm also asking if me and Jet can be co-authored in this resolution.
Yes, absolutely.
Other comments from commissioners? Vice President Sanchez.
Thank you. Can I add my name too? That'd be great. I just want to commend you, both of you, for this resolution. It's definitely big. There's a lot we're asking our staff to do at our sites and centrally. And you reference many resolutions that the board has, over the last 10 or 15 years, have passed and have not been fully implemented. And I think that it was wise of you to be really specific about that, and to essentially say, by doing that we haven't lived up to essentially the law of the land. When we pass a resolution, it's the law of the land. It is what we as a district commit ourselves to. And so for this resolution to be successful over the long term, we need to make sure that the various components are adhered to. And so I appreciate that there's a reporting back. I just want to be specific about the reporting back to the board, where it says, I'm trying to find it again. Report progress on implementation, including timeline by the first general board meeting in December 2019, and report to the Equity Studies Community Task Force quarterly until full implementation and on a biannual basis thereafter. Are you, when you are saying that, are you saying reporting to the board on a biannual basis?
Yes.
Can we be specific about that?
Do you want to add
I would just
that
say,
language?
and report to the board on a biannual basis thereafter. And the reason I would like to amend it to say that specifically is because I've mentioned this before in committee, the Safe and Supportive Schools resolution, which by and large has been implemented across the district. There have been some shortcomings, of course, in that implementation, but by and large. And part of the reason it has been successful is because it specifically mandated that the board be updated twice a year. And so we are always being reported to on it, and we are given the information and the statistics, and it's really helpful to us as a board as we make decisions for the future of the district. So if you could be more specific about that, that'd be great. And then there's a referencing September 2019, which is right now. So could you move that out a bit, because you could say it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you for the resolution.
Other comments? Commissioner Lam?
First, I just want to thank the community partners and the district staff. This is truly a collaboration, and I'm really excited about the next phase of this work, as other commissioners have raised, that the district, we have put forward many policies over the last decade and over 10 years now, but really haven't had that fully realized. And what that's the intentionality, as you saw, around the composition, not only of the community task force, but how important it is to have an integration and between district staff, moving with community at the same time, and then going back to the accountability and reporting back to the Board of Ed. This is also very personal to me, and thank you for sharing from that. I was an Asian American Studies major in undergraduate studies, and some of you all may know that I'm first in my family to go to college. And as a daughter of immigrants, I didn't really know my own history too. And to be able to see this for my children now and their peers, to be able to have this as the roadmap and the guiding principles and values, starting in pre-K and through their whole entire educational experience of students with us in the district to 12th grade. I'm just so excited, honored to be able to be one of the co-sponsors, co-authors today. And again, this would not have happened without community, and really the community partners have been doing this work for many, many decades, and more than the time that I've been here in San Francisco. So thank you.
Commissioner Collins?
I just want to echo this. I think part of the reason why I ran for Board of Education was because I was very inspired by so much of the work that happens in the district, and at the same time it seemed to be very opt-in, and it would happen at one site and then not at another, and that there wasn't every school and every teacher, there needs to be creativity. Folks need to feel like they're investing themselves in the work, but there didn't seem to be a clear infrastructure for making sure that it was happening for all kids. And when my kids then went through the system and were in classes where they only read authors who were European American, it was very upsetting for me, and it positioned me as a parent in a very uncomfortable space, and it positioned my kids in a very uncomfortable space. And as one of the public commenters said, when you have to bring up, when do I get covered in the curriculum, it automatically positions you as kind of an aggressive or a disruptor. And we're automatically, when students aren't already included by adults in the curriculum or on the walls of a building, when you have to bring that up, you become, it creates conflict. And so I feel like as a board and as a district, we as adults need to ensure that kids and families don't have to advocate for their own visibility in our schools. And so I'm very grateful for the folks who've collaborated on this, and I'm also grateful for all the folks who've been doing this work for 20 years and on, for folks in Teachers for Social Justice who are doing this work despite the support they get or don't get. They're doing this work. Ethnic studies teachers across the district who are doing this work. Students and peer resource folks who are doing this work and educating folks about our histories, and educating folks on self-love and self-knowledge, and showing us how to have solidarity with one another. And I also want to really thank and respect our leadership in the district, Nikki and the superintendent, and all the folks in curriculum and instruction who really gave us feedback, and I feel are really excited about this partnership. The San Francisco Human Rights Commission and all our external partners and all our community organizations like Coleman Advocates, all these other folks who are willing to kind of show up and help us build our capacity. This is like the time right now. It's more important now than I think it ever has been. And I'm very excited that our district, as it always does, is we're leading the way. And when I talk to educators across the country, they're amazed at the work that we're doing. And this is just one more step. So thank you all for the support, and I'm very excited about this as we move forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, roll call vote. Ms. Casco.
Thank you. And it's 196-25A1 as further amended by Mr. Sanchez tonight. Ms. Herrera? Aye. Thank you. Mr. Sandoval?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Lam?
Yes.
Ms. Lopez?
Yes.
Mr. Moliga?
Yes.
Ms. Norton?
Yes.
Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
And Mr. Cook?
Yes.
That's 7 ayes.